Nathan Gorman makes a successful return to the ring after a 15-month hiatus with a 10-round unanimous points decision win over Richard Lartey. It was a soporific affair. There was a lot of holding, a lot of mauling. It wasn't pretty to watch. Nathan Gorman, at the end of the day, did outbox Lartey, who came to fight and give it a go, but he was just far too crude and unsophisticated to get anything done. In the early rounds, Lartey was a bit of a handful, but as the fight progressed, a pattern emerged, and it was Nathan Gorman doing the better boxing, and he took a deserved victory. But as I say, a soporific affair, and there's not really much to say about it other than that. What I want to focus on in this video is some of the comments that Nathan Gorman has made, both before and after his victory over Lartey. He came into this fight very overweight, and he's never been a body beautiful to begin with, but he came in at 273 pounds for this fight. For the Dubois fight, he was 256, and he was in, let's say, the low 250s for most of his fights as a pro. So the career heaviest by far against Lartey, and he says that's because he put on an enormous amount of weight following his loss to Daniel Dubois. He said he turned his phone off, he wouldn't speak to nobody, and he didn't even pick up a pair of boxing gloves or go in a boxing gym for a long time after that Daniel Dubois defeat. The vast majority of boxing fans have never laced up a pair of gloves and even got in the ring to spar, much less had an amateur or even a pro bout. And as such, the majority of them can be very harsh on fighters when it comes to their expectations of what a fighter should be able to do following a loss. Because Nathan Gorman going into the Daniel Dubois fight was unbeaten like Dubois. Gorman is Tyson Fury's cousin. Gorman is from a traveling background. And traveling fighters, in terms of professional boxing, have been doing very well in the UK over the past few years with the likes of Tyson Fury, of course, and Billy Joe Saunders. So, against Dubois, there were lots of people. I saw them in the comment section of my videos in the lead up to Dubois Gorman. There were lots of people saying, Gorman's got this easy. He's going to outbox Dubois. He's a class above. He's a traveler. Daniel Dubois is too stiff, too robotic. Gorman's going to school him. Just like Fury did Wilder, or just like Fury did to Klitschko. These were the kind of comments I was getting in the comment section of my videos. And if that's what I was getting in the comment section of my videos, imagine what people were telling Nathan Gorman on his social media and in his social circle. Imagine the things they were whispering in his ear, gassing his head up. They were putting an enormous amount of pressure on Nathan Gorman to not only beat Daniel Dubois, but to do it handily. Okay? And it's a combination of things. It's a combination of maybe Nathan Gorman starting to believe his own hype. And also, somewhere in the back of his mind, because he had sparred Daniel Dubois, somewhere in the back of his mind, he must have known subconsciously, he might have tried to suppress this, but he must have known subconsciously that Dubois was more of a threat than maybe some of the people around him were making out. I mean, I remember in the lead up to Dubois Gorman, Gorman was saying that in the sparring sessions he had with Dubois, Dubois didn't even win a round. So he was talking very, very confidently and again, acting as though it would be like taking candy from a baby. I think deep down Gorman knew it was going to be tough, but because of all the people around him gassing his head up, making him feel like, look, you're Tyson Fury's cousin, you're a traveler, this is going to be easy work. He suppressed those doubts. So when he went in the ring, with all that pressure on him, with all that expectation on him from his people, from his community, from his fans, and he lost in that way in front of them, that must have been so humiliating for him. I can understand why he turned his phone off and he didn't step back into a boxing gym for that long. It's easy for people who have never laced up a pair of boxing gloves in their life and they've never been in Nathan Gorman's position. It's easy for them to sit around and say, oh, what's wrong with him? He needs to get back in the ring and this, that, and the other. You've never been in that situation. You don't know what it feels like even to lose a boxing match at all, much less lose a boxing match in that fashion with all that expectation on you. You know, Nathan Gorman is a young guy, just 24 years of age now. What was he, 23 when he fought Dubois? No, still would have been 24. 25th of the 6th he was born. So young guy. And he's talking about he was contemplating quitting boxing after his first loss. Just think about the psychological impact that loss had on him. And as I say, the circumstances surrounding that loss. So I feel for Nathan Gorman. Yes, he's a young guy and he made mistakes in terms of the way he approached the Dubois fight psychologically. But I feel for him because it's tough coming through what he's had to come through. And as the old saying goes, what doesn't, I guess it's not 100% accurate, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Perhaps I should say, what doesn't break you only makes you stronger. And Nathan Gorman was on the brink of being broken by that Daniel Dubois loss. But he's decided to get back on the horse. He's decided to come back. And this should make him stronger. Now, I don't know how far Nathan Gorman can go in the pro ranks. But whatever his potential is, he's, as far as I'm concerned, checked a box, right? He's passed a certain test by actually coming back and continuing and overcoming the humiliation of the Daniel Dubois defeat. He's passed a certain, gut check. Let me just say that. So I wish him nothing but the best. It's hard to cut because, generally speaking, even though Nathan Gorman was a bit cocky and what have you in the lead up to the Dubois fight, generally speaking, Nathan Gorman comes across as a pleasant type of chap, right? So, and even though I like fighters who have a lot of bravado and stuff like that, if they do it in the right way, I find it entertaining. But a guy like Nathan Gorman is fairly unassuming in his personality, is not particularly abrasive or whatever. And in terms of his boxing style, he's put on some good performances, some entertaining performances, like when he fought Sean Turner. I like that performance. And then, of course, he's put on performances like he did last night against Lartey, which leave a lot to be desired. But given the fact that he's coming back off such a long layoff, given the fact that he has had to lose a lot of weight, that he was coming back to conquer demons and all that kind of stuff, I can forgive him that kind of performance. David Hay, in his assessment of Gorman's performance, he was saying Gorman needs to be getting Lartey out of there and he needs to do this and needs to do that. See, David Hay has the mentality of a puncher. David Hay's mindset is, I need to knock all my opponents out. But that isn't the best way for every heavyweight to approach their fights. Some heavyweights go in there and they think, I'm going to win on points. I'm going to make sure I don't get hit. I'm going to make sure that I minimize risks and come out with a victory. In David Hayes' mind, that's not good enough because he was a puncher, because he had a different type of mentality. And he thinks that everybody is supposed to have his mentality. But they're not. David Hay, as good a fighter as he wasn't perfect. He made plenty of mistakes. And because he was so focused on power, that's what got him knocked out in the Bellew rematch. In the first Bellew fight, of course, his ankle gave out. But in the rematch, yeah, his ankle was still a bit dodgy. But it was more the fact, because David Haye was actually, for my money, doing quite well at long range, boxing Tony Bellew in the first couple rounds of the rematch. And I was thinking, if David Haye's sensible, he'll just try and outbox Tony Bellew for the whole 12. But David Haye isn't particularly sensible, at least not in certain situations. And when the opportunity came for him to try and go for Bellew and knock him out, he took it. And yes, that is what made David Haye exciting, but that was also what led to his downfall in that fight. And look, he might have lost to Tony Bellew anyway, but I'm telling you, he could have lasted longer if he played it safe behind the jab, using his longer arms and making Bellew have to work harder to get to him. But that was David Haye's mentality, the old puncher's mentality, backfiring on him in spectacular fashion in that Bellew rematch. So as much as, I like David Haye as a pundit, he doesn't seem to understand that there are different approaches to heavyweight boxing. It doesn't have to be all about knockouts, especially if you're coming back off a knockout defeat yourself. I know David Haye was all very cavalier when he came back after, suffering a KO defeat to Carl Thompson, and then later on in his career against Bellew. But obviously he lost to Klitschko, but that was on points. But as I say, there is no one-size-fits-all method for how a heavyweight should fight and how they should approach comebacks. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. Nathan Gorman's comeback, really, rather than the Lartey fight per se. Just the way the Daniel Dubois fight affected him psychologically. And you can apply this to most fighters, particularly fighters who were previously undefeated. You can apply this to them and have a little bit of understanding and sympathy in terms of how fighters are going to react to a devastating, humiliating defeat like this. It's like the same way when AJ lost to Andy Ruiz and people were so critical of the way AJ boxed in the rematch. It's like, are you kidding me? Do you know how much pressure is on this guy? He just got demolished by Ruiz, humiliated in America. Those images went all around the world. I'm sure there were people trolling him in his DMs on Insta, trolling him all over the internet, laughing at him and what have you. The amount of pressure that was on AJ going into the rematch from everywhere and everybody was almost unimaginable to most people. And yet they were trashing his performance in the ring. Oh, he was scared, running around the ring on his bicycle. Yeah, what would you have done if you were in that position with all that pressure on you? After being wiped out and being trolled by millions of people. Oh, you would have gone in there and taken it to Ruiz, right? Yeah, you're that much of a warrior. A keyboard warrior. So look, I criticize fighters for the things that they say to other fighters and, not making fights and making excuses, all this type of stuff. Conning the fans, as Frank Warren says. But when it comes to the stuff they go through psychologically, coming back from defeats and what have you, I'm not the one to sit here and say, oh, this guy is weak because he fought defensively in the rematch. Oh, that's terrible. When he got wiped out first time. Or say, oh, this guy is mentally fragile because look how he didn't want a rematch with so-and-so after he got beaten. Blah, blah. No. Boxing is not easy. It's a very, very tough sport. Mentally, even more so than physically. There's a reason why, even somebody I criticize a lot like Deontay Wilder, there's a reason why Deontay Wilder became a world champion and you and me haven't. And it's not just because of his punching power. It's also because Deontay Wilder has been a very determined individual. Yeah, as much as he's not the brightest guy and his boxing technique leaves a lot to be desired, Wilder is a brave guy. And I know there are degrees of bravery, but generally, compared to the average Joe, compared to the average boxer, Deontay Wilder's a brave guy. A very tenacious guy. A guy with a lot of self-belief. The same way for most boxers compared to the average Joe or the average person like me, you know, who had a few amateur fights, gave it a go. But ultimately, you need a next level of drive. And yes, you need a certain degree of luck as well. You know, some people have to work very long hours in day jobs and life happens to them. And before you know it, their opportunity to become professional boxers has passed them by. They just didn't have the time and what have you to train the way they wanted to train. Whereas some of the greatest fighters of all time, Mike Tyson, they have these mentors like Customado who took him out of the streets and groomed him from a young age to become a professional fighter. If Mike Tyson hadn't had Customado, well, he probably wouldn't have ended up as a professional fighter. He probably would have ended up in a not very good place. Okay, I mean, he was taken out of a juvenile detention center by Customado, basically. Yeah, he was in the juvenile detention center and there was a prison guard there called Bobby Stewart who gave Mike Tyson, a young, must have been 12, 13-year-old Mike Tyson, his first boxing lessons and sparring sessions, etc. And then he brought him to Customado. So anyway, long story short, the majority of top-level boxers, and even boxers on whatever level Nathan Gorman is at, they are mentally stronger, more confident, and have more self-belief than the average boxing fan. It's the reality of it. So, you know, when they go through all the stuff they go through with regards to the psychological trauma, having to come back from defeats, we need to cut them some slack, right? Could we do any better in their situation? Yes, we can compare them to other fighters, but when we do that, we do it respectfully. I've compared Anthony Joshua mentally to Tyson Fury, and I say that Tyson Fury has a higher level of innate confidence than Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is still a very confident guy, but I just think Tyson Fury naturally is even more confident. So I'm not, you know, bashing AJ, oh, you got no confidence and you cowardly. No. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, if you compare him to other fighters, in my opinion, there are other fighters out there who have even more confidence about them. You see, but whereas most boxing fans, they won't do that. They'll say, oh, Tyson Fury's mentally strong, AJ's totally weak. What a coward, what a clown. You see, that's not realistic. Most of the guys saying that, they couldn't walk a centimeter in AJ's shoes in terms of the pressure that he's had to put up with in his career. Anyway, let me stop waffling on about a whole heap of other fighters and just end this by saying, I wish Nathan Gorman nothing but the best in his career. He's got back on the horse. And let's see how far he can go. He has split up with Ricky Hatton, I believe. I haven't looked at the interviews explaining why he decided to part company with Ricky Hatton. So I'm not exactly sure what went on there. But, geez, I'm looking at Nathan Gorman's birthday. I'm getting distracted here, people. He was born in 96. I finished high school in 96. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Was it 96 or 97 I finished high school? One of those years. I was ready to step into the adult world, and this guy was just being born. Oh, man, time flies. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm out.